Hi, how are you doing? And welcome back to another video on the channel. What we have for you today is our preview video and team selection going into game week 25. And it is a blank game week, also a double game week. So there's lots to talk about and lots to discuss. I will say that I do think a lot of emphasis can be placed on these sort of game weeks where, yeah, there's doubles and there's blanks, but the people that are blanking, like Man United and Newcastle, a lot of people have players from those teams, and the teams that are doubling, like Everton and Wolves and even Liverpool, a lot of fantasy league players actually don't have players from those teams. So you could say there's a scope for upside to be had. But it's also like I don't think if you should change your whole team for this game week, because I think a lot of people are going to be in the same boat. And the difference in points probably isn't going to be that many. So we're going to get into it, and we're just going to talk about, my game week, last game week, and it was pretty good as we get the team on the board here. Sunday was definitely a lot better than Saturday, I'd tell you that, because we had Man United returning, and we also had Spurs returning as well. Fraser Forster keeping that clean sheet. Obviously, Rashford would have been great to captain him, but you can't really go against Haaland against Nottingham Forest. So that is what it is. Also, the correct decision to bench the Newcastle defenders and gone up about 200,000 places again. So, whilst we're still over 2 million, it has really transformed the last couple of months because it is my eighth green arrow in a row. So, super happy with that. And bringing in James Tarkowski for 8 points was a lot better than the alternative, which was going to be Kilman from Wolves. They conceded against Bournemouth. So, in a good place with the team, but that's not to say that things can't get better and I can't be proactive moving forward. So the team as it stands for game week 25 looks as follows, and there is quite a few blanks in there. Really, we would have Andreas coming off the bench to be active in the lineup for either Rashford or Mitoma, and it would give me 9 players that are going to be playing this game week, which is okay. But I do have 2 free transfers and zero point 0.4 mil in the bank. So there is the scope to kind of, I do need to spend a transfer, otherwise I'd lose it. So we are going to talk about teams, or sorry, players from my team that are on the chopping block. So I'm going to talk about specific players for my team, but hopefully, it might help you guys out if you've got a kind of a similar player. All these players are fairly common in other teams, I think. So, it's maybe give you some ideas of who you want to move on. And we're going to start with Dan Burn. So Dan Burn's going to be on my bench the next few game weeks, no matter what. The way I see it is, Newcastle's fixtures, then they're okay, but they're not really amazing, and they have been conceding a few more goals. They don't look to be the defence that they were even a few weeks ago, and I do think the League Cup final has a lot to play in that. I would have said that the Newcastle double up in defence is essential, but I'm not too sure anymore. And like we said, they do have the blank this game week, so I'm not going to be getting any returns from him and those clean sheets like we talked about. I just think they're looking a bit like they've lost momentum, and because they're not scoring very many, I think once they lose those clean sheets, it's not going to be great. We've also got the concept of Nick Pope missing some game weeks now as well after that red card. But there are plus sides to keeping Dan Burn in the team. They do have Wolves and Forest in 27 and 28. They're quite good from a defensive point of view. And they still have 2 fixtures that haven't been scheduled into their lineup as well. So the scope for double game weeks in the future is there in those West Ham and Brighton games. And he is super cheap. He's only 4.6 million. But whilst we're talking about Dan Burn, I do also think it's important to talk about Kieran Trippier as well. When I was doing a bit of research, did I find that Kieran Trippier only has 5 assists in 24 games, and I think the amount we sort of value on Trippier, he is absolutely having a fantastic season. You can't take that away. But I kind of expected him to have double-digit assists, and was surprised when I realised he only had 5. You kind of think that he's a lot more involved in an attacking point of view. And I think, if Newcastle are losing those clean sheets, it does kind of lose a lot of value into someone like Trippier. And I think if you were going to move someone like Trippier on, kind of depends on when you got him in and whether you're going to want him back. If you got on him very early, you've probably got a lot of value tied up in him. And I think that value is Not very important if you're not planning on getting Trippier back. You might as well cash in on the profit you have made, and that extra value only comes into play if you were going to want him back in the rest of the season. So I think if you're transferring Trippier out, you need to make sure that you are done with him for the foreseeable future. Next, we've got De Bruyne, and he has Champions League to contend with. So Man City, we're all having to deal with Man City's rotation anyway. And now the Champions League is starting up again. It's an extra headache, and considering he's worth so much money, I think is that headache I want to have. Is the value there? Whilst he is, obviously a world class player, I think, I could spread those funds elsewhere onto players that are absolutely certain to start. And he's got low recent returns. He is the top assist leader in the Premier League with 13, and he's got 4 goals. But he's only had 1 goal and 3 assists in the last 10 games. A lot of those assists came early on in the season. So I do kind of think that, is the value there? He's the sort of player that can, get a massive haul in any game week, but doesn't tend to do it every game week. And would you rather, for that price, have someone that's either a bit more consistent or someone who's cheaper and you can rotate with around your squad? Although the plus is for De Bruyne that I'm sort of wrestling with in my head is that he does actually have a fixture in 25. He's not currently blanking, and that fixture Bournemouth away looks pretty good. But then with the Champions League, it's obviously not a good fixture. You might as well blank if he's not going to play in it. And he is capable of those massive returns that we talked about just now. And Man City have a title race to win. I'm thinking, well, De Bruyne might get rotated, but the title race isn't over. It's far from over. And whilst they're dealing with the Champions League, they're also trying to win the league title. So, Man City are going to want to play the strongest lineup as often as they can. And De Bruyne is definitely a part of that. Next up, we've got Nketiah, and my main problem with Nketiah is risk of being dropped. I think he's not really performing in terms of attacking returns and sticking the ball in the net as we would have liked. And he's also, Jesus is probably going to come back. He's supposed to be coming back mid to late February. And I think even if Jesus doesn't come back immediately, someone like Martinelli can fill that attacking spot. There's also better Arsenal options from a fantasy league point of view, namely Odegaard. I think if I've got Nketiah and I've not got Odegaard, I think that's a bit of a, I've got the wrong player in there in terms of, mid to long term going forward. And he's got low output. Nketiah's got 2 goals and 1 assist in his last 7 games, but those 2 goals came in the same game against Man United, and his assist was when he got fouled for that penalty against Man City. So he's not actually sort of produced the assist. He kind of got that through winning a penalty and just basically getting clattered by Edison. On the plus side, though, Arsenal do have good fixtures. They've got Bournemouth, Palace, and Leeds in the next 6, as well as Fulham, Leicester, and Everton. He's also got a double game week right now. So to take out someone who's got a double game week just doesn't make sense to me immediately. But he is someone that I'm thinking he could be coming out in the next game week or so. And he is performing below his expected goals. So he has had over +1 expected goals in 2 recent game weeks when he also didn't score. So he has got those chances. He's getting the chances. It's whether he's just being unlucky or whether he's not quite got the quality or form at the moment to capitalise on those chances, in which case that XG doesn't matter as much. Anyway, what we've got here is the fixtures going into this game week as well. In terms of captaincy for your team, I think you probably have to captain either an Arsenal player, Salah, or Haaland. Arsenal, if you're looking for that steady consistency of Odegaard and Saka, I think they're the sort of players that could get, 1 goal or 1 assist per game week. I do think Salah, I would captain him over them just because I don't ever see Odegaard or Saka scoring a hat trick. I do see Salah scoring a hat trick. I think he could easily get a couple of goals in either of those 2 games. And Liverpool kind of are getting their act together a bit more. And I do think that kind of means that, they kind of know where they're going a little bit. They're getting players back from injury. They're looking a bit more solid. And, Salah has that upside. Man City do have a great fixture against Bournemouth, but I don't really see many people captaining Haaland. A, because he's not doubling, and B, because of the Champions League possible rotation and rest that he might get. So this is the plan. What is my team going forwards? And what I'm thinking of now is, I've got two assists, sorry, two transfers and zero point 0.4 million in the bank. I've got De Bruyne, probably going to take him out for Odegaard as transfer number one. And then transfer number two, I'm probably going to take Dan Burn out and replace him with Trent. So bear with me whilst we talk about this. De Bruyne to Odegaard. I'm increasing my number of players with fixtures by one. I'm going for a player with one fixture to a player with two fixtures. And with Dan Burn, I've got someone that's blanking to a player with not only a double game week, but someone that I might want mid to long term in Trent. So with Trent, Liverpool have Palace, Wolves, Bournemouth, and Fulham in 4 out of the next 5. And even if it's for short term, I do quite like the upside. Liverpool are also one of the teams that are less likely to blank because of sort of their lack of participation in domestic cup competitions. And making this move will still give me 3 million in the bank, and I could upgrade Nketiah to Tony for game week 26. In terms of getting Odegaard in, although he's only got 3 returns in his last 6, I do still think that's pretty good, especially for the price of 7 million. But you might hope for a bit more from Arsenal's main player. The main incentive for this is that Arsenal's fixtures long term look really good, and Odegaard is absolutely nailed on in that Arsenal midfield. So the team for the next game week, if I make these transfers, looks like this. We'd probably start with Ward in goal, and I've got two double game week defenders there in Tarkowski and Trent. Moving into the midfield, we'd still have one player blanking, but I've kind of made up for that, and that's nullified, is that blank, by the fact that I've got Trent in and I've got an Odegaard in, and they've both got double game weeks. So whilst I'm missing a fixture, I'm gaining fixtures elsewhere. And then up front, we have Kane, Nketiah, and Haaland. I've put the captain's armband on Haaland there. I'm probably not going to captain Haaland. It just depends on what transfers I make. I think I would probably in this team. I might even be persuaded to captain Trent. Like looking at the Liverpool defence there against Palace and Wolves, I could see them keeping 2 clean sheets. If they keep 2 clean sheets, Trent gets an assist. That is a big points haul there. The bench would look like that. And I do think that bench, when everyone is playing, that looks a pretty strong squad, if you ask me. And that is someone where if we do end up having doubles in the near future, I wouldn't have a problem at all if by playing the bench boost. I think that looks a really strong squad going into the next few game weeks. But let me know what you think. Am I making the right transfers? Is it a mistake to get Trent in, or am I capitalising on, the sort of the upside early on, which is what I want to try and do? And is it a mistake to get De Bruyne out this game week? Hopefully, it's helped you with your thoughts as well and your potential transfers if you've got players that are similar to mine or the exact same players. But let me know what you think. Good luck in this upcoming game week. Hopefully, it's not too much of a nightmare for you navigating through all the blanks. And I will see you in the next one.